So, what are the Akashic Records and where did they come from? What's the history of the Akashic Records? Um, you know, Akashic Records really became popularized in the United States because of a man by the name of Edgar Cayce, who was also known as the Sleeping Prophet. He was a really famous medical intuitive in the mid 20th century, born 1877, died 1945. And he became really well known for being able to put himself into a type of trance and then access the Akashic records of other people. He did medical intuitive readings and life purpose readings and readings like that, where he went into an altered state and accessed these records. And so he really popularized the term Akashic Records. But of course, Akashic Records are not unique to the West, nor were they invented in the West. Every culture throughout the world has made reference to something like the Akashic Records. And we have some explicit references in the written and oral traditions of cultures like the Indians, the Moors, the Tibetans, various people in the Himalayas, the Egyptians, the Persians, the Chaldeans, the Greeks, the Chinese, the Hebrews, the Christians, the Druids, and the Mayans, to name a few. Now, the word Akashic Records was coined in the West, and it was coined by some theosophists. And so sometimes people think, oh, the theosophists created the Akashic Records. But actually we have, going all the way back to Egypt, we have a tradition where it was believed that there was a god named Thoth or Tahuti, who was in charge of the Akashic Records, a book where the story of every soul was written. So Edgar Cayce did a number of readings for people, 14,000 readings for people all over the world, where he would go into a trance and access people's records and get all kinds of information about them, information about their past lives, about their purpose, about their health. And, he popularized the records. He brought them to the attention of Westerners. Now, prior to Edgar Cayce, there was another Westerner, Madame Blavatsky, who was a theosophist, who actually first started using the term Akashic Records in her writings in the West. Actually before her, and then also Rudolf Steiner and some other theosophists like Alice Bailey, all used this term in their writings, and this was in the early part of the early to mid 1800s. Now, they got this concept from the Tibetans. So Madame Blavatsky actually said in her writings that she learned about the Akashic Records from some Tibetan monks. And so she learned about it, put it in Western terms, brought it to the West, wrote about it in a way that we as Westerners could understand, and then, then later Cayce made it even more popular. And now, since then, lots of other people have talked about the Akashic Records. More recently, Linda Howe was the first person to really write a lot of books and start a school to teach people how to access the records. Now, the actual term Akasha is a Sanskrit word that's discussed in Hindu, Buddhist, and Tibetan texts. And probably the earliest writing is from the Vedas, dating to about 1200 BCE. So it's a very old term, and we have a recent book by someone named Ernesto Ortiz, whose method for accessing the records is said to come from an ancient Mayan tradition that's been kind of made available for modern humans. So if this is such an ancient idea, why is it only becoming popular now? Why are there all these books written about it now? Why are people talking about it now like it's a new thing? Well, it is a new thing in the sense that now everybody can access their own Akashic records. It used to be in all of these other cultures and for centuries that you had to go to a special priest or shaman who would then access the records for you. Nowadays, you can actually learn how to access your own records, and so there's been this proliferation of books written where people are teaching the reader how to access their own Akashic records. And so what's changed? What's changed is that we're in a shift in consciousness now, and we're at this point in history where humans are being given access to all of this information that wasn't widely available in the past. In the past, only certain people had access to this type of information. Only certain people knew how to go into trances or into altered states. Only certain people knew how to travel out of their body consciously, to go into other planes of existence and get information. Nowadays, almost anyone can learn how to go into a trance, or how to go into an out-of-body experience, or how to work with the Akashic records. And this is because of the shift in consciousness, the change in frequency on the planet, and the need for a critical mass of people to wake up. And so now everyone is being encouraged, okay, access your records, remember who you are, learn about yourself, get in touch with your soul purpose. So what are the Akashic records? The Akashic records are an energy library, which contains the records of every single soul and every incarnation of every soul. It's a library that exists on another plane. It's not a physical library, it's just an energetic library. And when you access the Akashic records, which you can conceive of as a giant library or storehouse or computer database that has all of this data, when you access it, you can use your name to access your record. And your record contains all of your incarnations, your pre-life conferences, your post-life conferences, your karma, your soul contracts. Everything there is to know about you as a soul is found in the records. And everybody can access their own records. You can learn a method to access your own records. There's a lot of methods out there, and you can learn one and access your own records. You're basically accessing them by going into a deep meditative state or a trance, sometimes a hypnotic state, or you're going, out of body. You're going into some kind of an altered state that allows you to move your consciousness out of your body and into a higher state where you can access information about who you really are. Now, everyone can't access everyone's records. It's still the case that only certain people are able to access everybody's records, but everybody can access their own records, and everyone doesn't need to access everyone's records, because some people aren't responsible enough to access other people's records, because it's like, going into someone's house and rifling through all of their belongings. Who would you want to do that? Who would you trust to do that? If you sent someone into your house and say, I want you to, go through everything in the house and find, the most important things to take out of the house in case of a fire. Who would you trust to do that? Only certain people, so you don't want just anybody doing that. But you don't have to go to somebody to have them go to your records, because you can go yourself. And that's the great thing about the time we're living in right now, and the fact that we all have access to this information, and we all have the ability to do this work on our own.